I'm also really interested in the area of helping women kind of sail through perimenopause more easily, gamble or a bit of the luck of the draw in terms of how bad or how easy your menopause is going to be.
Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Radiant Women. I am so excited today. I've been dying to speak to this woman. She is a qualified nutritionist and a naturopath with over 13 years of international clinical experience, an award-winning author and a leading women's health expert. She has given sold-out talks from Europe to the Middle East to Asia, and her work has been featured in publication including Women's Health, Sheerluxe, and Gulf Times. She has an award-winning book, A Beautiful Balance, A Wellness to Guide Healthy Eating and Feeling Great. Zoe, thank you so much for coming on. I'm so excited that you're here.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
So tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do and what you specialize in.
Yeah, so I mean, my whole background is working with people one-on-one who are suffering with all sorts of different chronic health conditions. But in more recent years, I've really honed in and specialized on women's health, and specifically women who are dealing with the symptoms of various different hormone imbalances. And that's my passion, is to like empower women with the knowledge they need to be able to make some really smart changes in their lifestyle and their diet and even their mindset sometimes, that can help to transform their hormonal health and their symptoms, basically.
Okay, so tell us about, like, from basic, I have no background in physical health. This mine's all about the head.
Yeah.
So tell us, why do hormones create such a havoc? So why is it so important to have them balanced?
Yeah. I mean, hormones are fascinating because there's so many different hormones in the human body, and they all exert different effects, on different organs and
Yeah.
systems. And our hormones kind of work all together. And when they're in balance, then they help our bodies function effectively, right? And that's physically, but obviously also hormones can have a big impact, on our mood and our mental health as well. And
Yeah.
the problem is, like, over recent years in my clinic, I've seen more and more people struggling with the symptoms of hormone imbalances. So, and that can range from, I think typically we think of, when we think of hormone imbalances, maybe the first thing we might think of is sex hormone imbalances, right? So things like people going through the perimenopause, perhaps, or maybe people struggling with ovarian cysts and things like that. And although that is like a major focus of what I personally work with, there are also other hormones that can be out of balance that can have a really big impact on our well-being. So things like imbalances in stress hormones, or imbalances in our thyroid hormones, which set our metabolic rate, for example. Imbalances in our blood sugar regulating hormones, and that's a real big one as well. And the thing is, all of these various different imbalances are all linked, and they all impact each other. So, these kind of imbalances are super common, and there are a lot of people that perhaps don't know that they have these imbalances, but they have symptoms and they're not feeling optimal, or maybe they have like quite a few different symptoms, but they don't know that it actually is their hormones that's causing this.
Right. Okay. That makes sense. So what are then some of the symptoms that um, that we have? Because oftentimes, especially when we go to the doctor, I feel like the amount of times I've been to the doctor, and I had a daughter, and so I gave birth, and I don't think my doctor has ever brought up hormones. So how do we actually know whether they're balanced or not, apart from the big ones where we have diabetes and things like that? We're talking about blood sugar level and things like that. What are some of the symptoms that we think we might be hormone imbalance?
Yeah. Okay. So obviously with women specifically, a big thing is like if you are having any issues around menstruation. So, for example, if
Mm,
you are having either maybe very heavy or very painful periods, or if you're having
mhm.
irregular periods, or even if your periods obviously have completely gone missing. Um, Also, if
Yeah.
you're having very bad PMS symptoms as well. So, I think
Mhm.
one of the issues that sometimes women come across is maybe when they go to report some of their symptoms, they are kind of almost told it's kind of normal as a woman to experience this stuff. But I can just tell you, if you're experiencing very extreme mood swings or really big pain with your period, or you're feeling really anxious or depressed every single time before your period, or you're getting really bad water retention and bloating, that's not normal. And actually, you don't have to just put up with it.
Mm.
So, so yes, there's some of the
Okay.
more sort of sex hormone based ones. And then obviously as well, if you're a woman and you've been diagnosed with either ovarian cysts or endometriosis or PCOS
Mm.
or PCOS as it's sometimes called, or polyps, or adenomyosis, any of those conditions, they are all connected to imbalance, hormone imbalances, basically. So if you have any of those conditions, some of the ways they can be helped is by rebalancing your hormones.
Oh, okay. Right, right. So,
So they're
so how do we then, sorry, go on.
yeah, I was just going to say, so that they're the like the sex hormone imbalances, but then like there are different symptoms of thyroid hormone imbalances, and there are different symptoms of blood sugar imbalances. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So does that mean then that there are hormonal balances to different I guess to different extents and different levels? And does that mean then the symptoms could something like tiredness, lack of concentration, or something like that, where it's not so extreme, could that be because of a hormone balance? Or are hormone balances usually cause extreme I guess side effects.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, tiredness is such a common symptom, right? And tiredness is connected to so many different things, and it can be caused by so many different things. It's like one of the most common
Yeah.
symptoms that people come to a healthcare provider about, right? So, lots of different things. But yes, certainly, if you had, for example, low thyroid function and your body was not producing enough thyroid hormone, one of the symptoms of that is fatigue, low energy. So certainly, it can be connected to hormone imbalances for sure. And definitely with blood sugar dysregulation. So if you are, there is a sort of spectrum of blood sugar issues, if you like. So going from obviously at
Yeah.
one end, healthy blood sugar regulation, and then the other end, full blown diabetes. But there's an area
Yeah.
in the middle before you develop diabetes, right, where your blood sugar is poorly regulated, and then further down that track
Mhm.
you get to a like a pre-diabetic state, and then you can end up with type 2 diabetes, right? But obviously what a lot of people are in, they're in that kind of middle ground between not perfectly regulated blood sugar and not type 2 diabetes yet, but their blood
Yeah.
sugar's all over the place and their insulin levels are too high and they're feeling fatigued a lot of the time. And often with that sort of thing, if it is blood sugar that's an issue for you, often the energy levels can be quite up and down. So it can be like sometimes you feel energetic and other times you really crash.
Right, right. Okay. So I guess that's then what they need, what women or what we all need to look out for and kind of be mindful, like I guess create awareness of our energy levels and what's happening in our body to kind of figure out whether, it is hormonal or it is something else, or, is it something that we need to look at? Because as you said before, there's a whole new level to normal. And it feels like, whatever we come up with, it's a normal. It's like, okay, yes, it's normal, but I'm not feeling good. It could be normal, but I don't want to feel like this.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And I think we've got to get away from the idea that just because we're a woman particularly, that we have to just put up with certain things, that certain things are like, you know, just suck it up kind of thing, because actually that can sometimes prevent women seeking medical care or going to see their doctor, because they're kind of under the illusion that these kind of things are normal, when actually I think if we had more open discussion about women's hormones and menstruation, all these kind of things, and it wasn't so taboo, then women would be more empowered by that knowledge to know when something was normal and something actually could be a sign of something more serious, you know, because that's really important, obviously.
Okay. Yeah. When you have clients come to you, and I assume a lot of them have, because I feel like the first point of call that we go to is a GP, or or a doctor of some version. Do you have
Yeah.
clients come to you, they've gone, I've seen the doctor and I feel like they weren't helping me. Can you help? Why do you think that the doctors aren't, they're not up to speed on this, I guess?
Well, in answer to your question, yes, I often get people coming to me after they've maybe gone down the conventional approach, and maybe they haven't got the answers that they're looking for, and they're still left with a lot of questions about what's going on with their health, or perhaps they've been offered some options in terms of what they could do, but
Yeah.
they didn't want to take them up on it. For example, this is just one example. I worked with a client some time ago who basically actually I was already working with her, but she'd already gone to the doctor before about her symptoms, because I always encourage my clients to go and see the doctor about their symptoms, and I work in an integrated way with medical professionals. But basically, so she'd already gone to the doctor originally. Then she said, I want to come and work with you on my issues. She was having terrible cystic acne. She was having male pattern hair growth on her face and body. And her periods were a little bit
Right.
irregular, not massively, but a little bit irregular. And I immediately suspected she may have polycystic ovaries. So I basically referred her back to a doctor to get that investigated. I said, explain your symptoms and request an abdominal scan, basically an ultrasound, to have a look at your ovaries. And when the doctor did that, he found multiple small cysts, so the polycystic ovarian syndrome was confirmed. But then he also found a larger cyst, which was like they call it a chocolate cyst, which basically is like a blood-filled cyst, and it was quite large. And his response was, well, we've got to obviously keep an eye on this. They obviously ran some blood tests to check the tumor markers to make sure there wasn't any kind of cancer, and that was cleared. So, but then he was like, okay, so I can offer you the pill basically to manage this and to try and prevent that cyst growing larger. Now, that didn't work for her because she wanted to get pregnant within the next 18 months. That's what she wanted to do. So it was like completely didn't make sense for her to go on the pill, right? So she was like, is there anything else you can offer me? And he was like, not really. It's like the pill or surgery, basically. And obviously, although the surgery can be absolutely necessary sometimes in these situations, there is obviously a risk from surgery of damage to the ovary and perhaps some kind of damage to future fertility. And obviously that was a really big concern for her because, she wanted to have a family. So she said to the doctor, look, I want to work with a naturopath and nutritionist on this for 3 months. And then can I do that and then come back to you for another ultrasound and we'll see where we're at, basically. And then we can make a decision about how to go forward. And he was like, yeah, that's fine. Like, of course. Anyway, we worked together for 3 months. I put her on my program, which is my She Code program, which basically it teaches you how to change your diet, to eliminate foods that are imbalancing your hormones, and gives you functional foods to actually help to improve and optimize your hormonal health and the health of your gut. And and also lifestyle tools to help manage stress. And it's like a really comprehensive program with like natural supplements that help to balance hormones too. Anyway, we did that together. Acne completely cleared, and she'd been suffering with this cystic acne for years and years. And then the male pattern hair growth got a lot less as well. So all of the outward signs were obviously positive that we were going in the right direction. And then after the 3 months, she went back to the doctor, and he did a scan, and his jaw kind of dropped open, and she was like, "What?" And he was like, "I can't believe it." He was like, "Everything's disappeared, all of the tiny cysts and the big chocolate cyst, which is really unusual for that to spontaneously resolve. Very unusual." And he was like, "How
Yeah.
have you done this?" And she said, "I told you I was going to work with a nutritionist and a naturopath." And he was like, "Oh, what did you do together? Tell me more." He was like really interested to know what she'd been doing with me.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so it's like, I love those situations where you really see the power of natural interventions to actually really help this stuff, right, and turn things around. And then she's now got a little baby as well, so it all worked out well for her.
Beautiful. And it's so powerful that she found a doctor that was accepting of I guess it's not even alternative. It is in a sense alternative ways, but a lot of doctors that I know, I certainly went to a doctor that told me naturopaths are a waste of money, and just things like that that I found really shocking, because I was like, well, I've been to, all the doctors out there to help me with my issues, and none of them were able to, apart from this naturopath. So, I'm sticking with it. So I love that.
Yeah.
That he was also so accepting.
Yeah, exactly. And I'd like that to be the future of healthcare, that it was much more integrated, because it makes sense. It's like, as far as I'm concerned, like, I'm always very concerned about what the underlying causes of anything are. So I don't want to just know what is going on. I want to know why, because then I think once you understand why, you can do something to actually address the root causes, right? And I'm also a massive advocate of preventative medicine, right? So trying to ward off more serious conditions down the track, right? Because obviously we all know that small imbalances can lead to bigger imbalances, which can lead to really serious chronic disease down the track, right? From type 2 diabetes to cardiovascular disease to cancer, So I'm really about like prevention as well as management of conditions, and I think, obviously modern medicine is genius for things like surgery, life-saving surgery, and they're amazing at treating like acute situations, right? But in some cases, they don't really have a kind of thing so much for preventative medicine. It's not so much part of the
Yes.
conventional medical model, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of times I also found, and I don't know what it's like in other countries, but in Australia, that, when you have something, there's really sort of that lack of education about, um, you know, um, what we can do about it, in terms of, okay, so I can take these pills or I can do this thing or whatever it is, and that's great. But is there anything, and I guess that leads to my next question, is something has caused me to come to this point. So what is it that I can reverse, or what is it that I can do to avoid it happening again? So I guess my question then to you is, in terms of hormone imbalances, for those of us that are not experiencing acute symptoms, but we're starting to feel something, or we're worried we might go down that path, is there things that we can avoid and do to, I guess, increase our chances of not suffering serious illnesses?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, obviously, there's so many things, right? Because, if we're just talking about sort of general nutrition and preventing chronic disease in general, there's so many things we can do, right? To from a lifestyle perspective and from a dietary perspective, in terms of things we can do less of and things we can do more of to actually like improve our health. I mean, specifically with the hormonal stuff, what's interesting is that, I work with women sometimes who are, because obviously it depends on your life stage a little bit, because obviously as women, as we evolve through our different life stages, our bodies will have slightly different needs and requirements and so forth. However, I'm also really interested in the area of helping women kind of sail through perimenopause more easily, because I think a lot of women feel that basically it's kind of like a bit of a almost like a gamble or a bit of the luck of the draw in terms of how bad or how easy your menopause is going to be, right? Because some women get to menopause and they have a horrendous experience, and then they feel, oh, my only option is basically HRT, right? And what
Sorry, what is
actually you can
HRT?
do is it's basically hormone replacement therapy, which is for
Oh, yes.
perimenopausal women, which helps to replace some of the sex hormones that are naturally declining in your body at that time. And it can help women, because some women, when they're perimenopausal, can obviously have things like really horrible hot flashes or insomnia or depression, issues with libido and sexual function. And there's all sorts of things that can be really awful, actually, and really, really negatively impact a woman's quality of life at that time. But it doesn't have to be like that. Menopause, honestly, can be no more than a blip on a woman's radar if she can set her body up in advance of the perimenopause, so that she's eating in a certain way, doing certain things in her lifestyle that can really help her sail through more easily. So, yes, HRT is definitely an option, but it's not the only option,
Yes, this is what I'm talking about. These are the things that we don't know about. And when we go to our doctor, I've certainly never heard it speak, or I've never heard anyone talk about it, so what can we do to help us that's a little bit more natural? And of course, then it has benefits, elsewhere, it just impacts our whole life, not just, we're aiming for this one thing, but it spreads out everywhere kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think the thing is as well that sometimes I think what is underestimated is that if, like, obviously women often are doing a lot, right? So obviously it depends again on each woman and what stage of life you're at and stuff. But I certainly know that I've worked with a lot of women who are juggling a hell of a lot. Maybe they're busy mothers, they're also perhaps working. Maybe the main child caregivers. They also may do the lion's share of the housework as well. And actually they're trying to wear so many hats and doing so much stuff that they don't have enough time to actually really give some self-care to themselves and nourish themselves. And so some of these women are super burnt out, actually, and their whole stress response system, their HPA axis, is strained and like sort of overreactive, highly reactive, basically, which can then destabilize their stress hormones, stress out their poor adrenal glands that produce the stress hormones, and that can really set the stage for a very difficult menopausal transition. Because if your adrenals are not functioning properly, because once we as women we transition through perimenopause and we get out the other side to actual menopause, when our periods fully stop, our adrenal glands are supposed to take over some of the production of stress hormones from the ovaries. But if we've been chronically stressed, our adrenals are not going to do a very good job at that, and we're going to have a much harder transition. So it's like, don't get me wrong, like, I'm a nutritionist, and like, food is medicine, and it is the foundation of all of this stuff we're talking about in terms of preventative medicine and managing chronic health conditions. However, I think sometimes people underestimate the stress factor as well, and how important stress management is for all of this stuff as well.
Yes, absolutely. I've heard it time and time again, that stress can have obviously mental impact, and being a counselor, I see that a lot. It can have impact on anxiety, depression, and it kind of, that's where it starts off. But I also seen people with who have medical condition, or they're being treated for something, and then once they start going to therapy, that in itself helps to reduce whatever it is they're going through. So again, what we were saying, being able to manage that stress and being able to, I guess, feel a little bit more helps physically as well as mentally.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's so powerful, isn't it?
Yeah. Love that. So then you were just saying that, obviously being a nutritionist, food is medicine. So, and I know we hear this all the time, but it doesn't hurt to hear it again. What are some of the foods that we should be looking for, and what are some of the foods that we should be avoiding?
Yeah, I mean, as a general rule, obviously, one of the kind of big scourges of our time and something that is responsible for a lot of chronic diseases worldwide, because obviously we've just been through an infectious disease pandemic, right? Everyone's aware of that. However, in terms of like the worldwide global deaths from disease, obviously by far the biggest killer of all is chronic diseases, right? Chronic diseases like
Yes.
chronic respiratory diseases, cardiovascular disease, diabetes type 2, obesity, all of these things, they're the biggest killers. And the thing is, the thing that all of these diseases have in common is they're connected to the consumption of ultra processed foods. And ultra processed
Right.
foods being, there's all sorts of degrees of food processing, right? From the basic, oh, we'll pick up an apple. Obviously, it's not being processed at all, or right up to the ultra processed food level, where it's like it's the most highly processed type of food, where it's like, let's say, for example, the type of cake that you might pick up from a supermarket shelf. That when you look on, firstly, the best or the use by date is like months ahead, and you're like, huh? How is this
Yes,
cake gonna
sometimes
survive?
years.
Like,
Yes.
yeah. And then you look at the ingredients and
It
it's got
lasts
like
7
50
days, but
things
this
in it.
cake,
Yeah. And then you look at the ingredient list and there's 50 ingredients and half of them you can't pronounce them. You don't know what they are. They're all these kind
yeah,
of chemical names. And obviously that's like one example of an ultra processed food. Fast food obviously is another
right.
example. Like if I'm sure some people have heard about the story of like, you know, fast food chips and how they make them. It's not just a question of a potato in a deep fat fryer. There's all sorts of weird ingredients that have gone into that. There's like there are burgers from some of the big fast food companies that have like survived for years, that basically that burger is still there. And it's like, what is preserving, what is in that is preserving it for that long? Um, so yeah, so it's like Frankenfood, basically, Frankenfood. So
Yeah.
that kind of food has become so much more widely consumed now. And like, in much of the Western world, like they did some studies recently and they were saying, like, for example, in the UK, that of the average person's shopping basket, 60% of what they're buying each week is ultra processed food. So if you put that in context,
Whoa.
of like, yeah, yeah. So it's like that's how much we're actually consuming and unknowingly. And I think a lot of people have no idea. Obviously, why would they? That these foods are doing them harm, and they are causing so much harm. Yeah, because obviously they've got not just the additives and the chemicals they've got in them, but the trans fats, the hydrogenated fats, the high salt, very high salt content, there's just so much about the very high sugar content. There's so much about these foods that
Yeah.
is absolutely causing health issues. So, until we change that, until we change people's consumption habits, until we change the whole way we kind of process food and what we think of as food, we're still going to be stuck in this situation of like an ever expanding chronic health crisis globally, Yeah.
Yes. Wow. Okay. That was that was amazing what you've just said there. Now, in terms of there's all these foods being sold to us, and of course we're not aware. I guess we are aware, but at the same time we're not aware. We kind of we put our trust into the supermarkets and government. That they'll do the right thing, and sometimes it's not what happens. And again, there's so much advertisements and media being pushed to us in terms of supplements and this for that. Like I think there is a supplement for everything in the world, even stuff that doesn't exist. So and it's sometimes very tempting. Like if you have, let's say, lack of concentration or you fatigue, and you see something that pops up and it's like, it can solve all your fatigue problems. You're like, ooh, can it? Do I? Like it's very intriguing. So tell us about what, in terms of supplements, what should we caution, and what should we caution for? What should we look out for? How do we know what we can trust?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is with natural supplements, like obviously I use them all the time in my clinical practice because although you can exert quite huge changes with the stress management stuff and the dietary change, like you can have huge changes. Often people who've been struggling with issues for many years or where they have a lot of more complex different symptoms going on, they also need to take certain specific natural supplements to help them recover faster, right? However, obviously, when I work with
Yeah.
someone one on one, I recommend them on a one to one basis. So, like everything I create for a client is like bespoke to them and it's been handpicked based on the fact that I know their medical history and all of their symptoms and what they're taking, if they're taking any pharmaceutical medicines rather. Um, uh, so it becomes a bit more challenging if someone, like a lay person, is trying to self uh, kind of diagnose and self pick supplements, because of course you can do your research and you can find out about a certain supplement, and you may well be right that you need a certain vitamin or a certain mineral or something, but it is always important to get some tests done. So for example, this is just one example, you don't want to be taking iron unless you know for sure you're deficient in iron, because iron is one of those
Okay.
things, if you take it and you don't need it, it can actually build up to dangerous levels in the body. So that's just one example, right? So it's like
Right.
it's just important that with certain things you are getting blood tests done as well, just to make sure you actually need that nutrient. So and you can do that through your GP,
Yeah.
um or you can work with a nutritional therapist or a naturopath one on one, and they'll create a plan bespoke for you, But I think if you were, say, for example, you you had a cold, or maybe you were getting quite a few colds, and you wanted to both boost your immune system, and you thought, oh, do you know what? I really want to get a good quality vitamin C supplement, and so that
Yeah.
basically, I can just take the vitamin C to kind of try and boost my immune system, or if I actually get sick, I can take some high dose vitamin C just while I'm sick, just to try and speed
Yeah.
up my healing, right? Obviously that kind of thing is like, yeah, it's very common and lots of people want to do it. If you're looking for supplements, one thing I would say is quality matters. So like, not all supplements are
Yes.
created equal. So if you buy, and like, I don't want to badmouth all supermarket supplements because like some of them are good, right? But in general, if it's like quite a cheap, brand like supplement, it'll often have quite a few fillers in it, and they're not going to be as high quality ingredients necessarily, and that means that it won't be as bioavailable to your body, so you're not going to get the same benefit from it effectively. So I would
Right.
say that you usually get what you pay for with supplements, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So that would be something, and go for like reputable brands. That would be one of the things I'd say. And obviously, one other thing, if you are on any prescription medications or over the counter medications,
Yeah.
it is important to check in with your healthcare provider to make sure there's not any contraindications or interactions between the supplement and medication. Because although natural supplements on the whole are well tolerated and low in side effects, they still can happen with certain people, and there still can be some interactions between natural substances rather and medications. So it's just important to check if you are basically on taking any.
Okay. So if someone's like, so what Zoe's talking about absolutely resonates with me. It certainly does with me. Where do I go for help? So, I guess if GP isn't something that, we were just saying that it doesn't always turn out the way we want it to, is there books? And you mentioned something about a She Code program that you have. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about that, and where do we start? If we are all, we're everywhere in the world, where do we start?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, if you are a woman and you've already consulted your GP or your doctor about your symptoms, and yeah, either they don't have a solution for you at all, or they basically have offered you something, for example, like the pill or something like that,
Mm.
and that isn't for you, or some women can't take the pill, for example, because they get such side effects, because everybody's different, right? Like some women will get very high blood pressure from it, or really bad depression and stuff. So, if you're a woman in that situation, this is why I created my She Code program, basically. So an online program. So it means that women anywhere in the world can do it. And you can do it online.
Yes.
So it means that you can do it, in your own home, and also it's self-paced. So even though it's like a 12-week program, you can do it at your own pace in your own time, which I think, as busy women, it's helpful to be able to like do it at your own pace. But I created it specifically for women who are dealing with the symptoms of hormone imbalances. So like some of the things we've touched on already today, but like PCOS, really bad PMS, like mood swings or anxiety and stuff before your period, water retention, heavy or painful periods, or irregular or
Yes.
missing periods, even like hair loss or low libido, that kind of thing. So that's why I created this program. And yeah, and it basically teaches you from beginning to end through the 12 modules how you can make small but effective changes to your diet and to your lifestyle to
Yes.
actually transform your hormonal health, basically. And it's informed from my 14 years clinical experience. And I just wanted to create, like, I started off saying I was going to make this a 6-week program. I was like, it's going to be 6 weeks. And then as I was creating it, I was like, oh no, but I want to put this in, and oh, I want to teach them about this as well. And I'm like, they need to know this. And then it ended up 12 weeks basically. Because yeah, I wanted also to make sure that I kind of put a spotlight on specific symptoms. For example, there's like a specific
Yes.
module about like really painful periods or heavy periods or PCOS, because I wanted to be able to speak to all those women so that they can actually really get value from it. And it also gives women guidance apart from how to make the changes themselves. It's got, well, firstly, it's like 86 hormone balancing recipes they get with it, and loads of downloadable resources
Mm-hmm.
to help make the changes. And then there's also live calls with me through the program. So every 2 weeks, there's a live group coaching call where we do like a Q&A, and all the women can ask me questions. And there's also like a private Facebook community where me and my team answer people's questions whenever they have them in there as well. And all of the women on She Code can support each other in that group as well. So it's like a really nice sisterhood where everyone's like sharing their stories and helping each other. Yeah. But it's
I
like,
love
I'm
it.
so excited about this program because it's just like my life's work, and I know that it's helping so many women, and yeah, that's just a really good feeling, obviously.
Yes, absolutely. I love that. And it's that type of program is so, so important because we, listening to you, and obviously people that are listening to from my program know, like, I've spoken to you before, and, just listening to you can tell that, you know what you're talking about. You have the expertise, you have the experience behind it. And so it's important to have that so that people can go to someone they can trust, and they can, so they can learn the general stuff that we all should know, but at the same time have that questions, have that platform where they can ask questions in case it's something specific, or feeling like, all right, I'm understanding that, but there's just this little bit that I don't quite, it's
Yeah.
specific to me and I don't know.
Yes.
So thank you for creating that. That's absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, no, thank
We
you.
will link we'll link Zoe's social media and her website in the description, in wherever you're listening to this. But please, do you want to just tell it, yourself, where can we find this information? Where can we find you? And where can we find this amazing program?
So it's all through either my Instagram or my website. So it's on both of them. So my both of my website and my Instagram, it's the same. It's just my name. So it's Zoe Palmer Wright, and you can find me there. And the program is under like my offerings, basically work with me, and you can check out She Code on there on the website, and then on the Instagram, the link is in my bio to the program details. Yeah, and obviously if anyone has any questions, they can just shoot me a DM on Instagram, and I'd be happy to answer any questions as well. So yeah.
Wow, thank you so much for that. Thank you for having me on and taking some time out of your very busy life, and just to help us out and share just wealth of information with us in terms of health and hormones. Thank you so much.
It's my absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on. It's been great.
Thank